And this is being presented by the Senior and Caregiver Education, or the Resource Center. So sorry, apparently speaking is very difficult tonight. And we're very excited about this topic. It's a really important one. At the Resource Center, they've been seeing an uptick in the amount of elder fraud cases, and it's a resource that we really want the public to be able to have access to. So this is being recorded tonight, and we will be able to share it again, which is awesome. We are at the Mendenhall Library tonight, and yeah, next week is our last session in the 4-part series, and we're looking forward to having that as well. What is the topic again for next week?
Medicare 101.
Next week is Medicare 101, so I hope that you come back next week and learn a little bit about that. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Beth, who is going to share her screen and talk about elder fraud and abuse. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you. Okay, so you should be able to see the Office of Elder Fraud and Assistance slide on your screen. My name is Beth Goldstein. I am the Deputy Director and Supervising Attorney for the Office of Elder Fraud and the Public Guardian section for the state. And interestingly enough, we just won a $1.5 million judgment in an elder fraud case that we tried in March in Juneau. 2 individuals who were defrauded a Yakutat elder of close to $700,000, and we finally got justice for her. So we're really proud of that. The Office of Elder Fraud and Assistance was created by the legislature in about 2006, and the mission of the agency is to investigate claims regarding financial exploitation. This is of individual Alaskans who are 60 or older. And we don't seek criminal remedies, so we don't have any criminal charging authority. Our job is to find civil remedies. So our job is to try to get the money back for individuals who have been defrauded. And these are folks who can't get assistance any other way. So either because of their finances or because of their age or because of their inability to maneuver through the system, we're here to help them get some sort of remuneration from their exploitation. Financial exploitation, as many of you are aware, is a huge problem amongst the elderly in our country, and 75% of the nation's consumer wealth is held by people 50 and older. And the most recent studies show that 1 in 5 Americans over the age of 65 has been victimized by some sort of financial swindle. And I think that this number has definitely grown, especially since COVID. But the last survey that was done for folks who are willing to admit that they were swindled, it was determined that $2.9 billion a year are being swindled out of senior citizens in the United States. That doesn't count countries, UK, Canada, Australia, any of those other countries. And we know that while 50% of the fraud is committed by complete strangers, family and friends account for about 35% of the financial abuse that we see. And so we ask the question of who are the perpetrators? Of these family members, we see that about 60% of the perpetrators are adult children of our elderly victims. And of those 60%, about 45% of those perpetrators are 40 or younger, and 40% are between 41 and 59. So it's a pretty even split amongst the adult children. What we try to teach when we come out to webinars like this, and when we come to speak at senior centers or we speak at senior living facilities, is how to spot signs of financial exploitation. What I've learned throughout the years of doing presentations like this is a lot of the elders who are coming to these presentations aren't the folks who are getting swindled. They are the folks who know what to look for. So we try to teach you what to see in your friends and your family members that might indicate financial exploitation. When we see things like an elder's lifestyle that's not consistent with their income or assets, and this is different than what you would think. We're not talking about people who are living beyond their means. We are talking about people who should be living better than they are, but they're doing things like cutting their medication in half because they can't afford to buy their medication anymore. Or they're putting groceries back out of their cart that they used to be able to afford, should be able to afford, but they're not able to afford it anymore, right? We see an unexplained or a sudden inability to pay their bills, or like I just talked about, get their necessities. And we're not talking about things like inflation right now. We're talking about they should normally be able to afford the necessities that they've been able to afford. There are unusual transfers of assets from the elder to another person. Somebody signs a quitclaim deed, or somebody transfers funds, and this is something very unusual. And they've not talked to a lawyer about it. The family members don't know about it, or it's a family member who has been out of the picture for a long time. So this is an unusual transfer. There's an abrupt change in a will or other financial documents. So while we can't do anything about somebody changing a will now, it's an indication potentially of financial exploitation. Think about the individual who has plenty of friends and family. Their will's been set for a long time. It's set to leave their estate to their daughter, their son, their grandchildren. And now we have a personal care assistant who the will has been changed to leave them everything. Something like that. We see an unexplained disappearance of funds or possessions. Unfortunately, some of the best victims for perpetrators of financial exploitation are individuals with memory problems, elders who have Alzheimer's or dementia. And the excuse is easily used of, oh, grandma just misplaced that. Or, yes, she had this beautiful diamond ring, but she must have lost it. The unexplained disappearance of funds. What I want you to be aware of, that when people come into the home, right? Service providers, care providers, checkbooks laying out, okay? They're not going to take the check off the top. They're going to take a check from in the middle of the check, and that check could be forged. So you're looking for things like that. The discovery of an elder's signature being forged for financial transactions, titles, or financial documents. We had a case where a gentleman came to us after he had been in the hospital for a stroke, and he had been in rehabilitation. And he said, I think that my son has taken my truck and my property, my boat. And I said, well, how did he do that? Well, I think that there's a power of attorney out there. So we got the power of attorney from the Division of Motor Vehicles. And I said to him, well, here's this power of attorney. He looked at the back page and he said, that's not my signature. I said, but it's notarized. And he said, yes, but that notary is my ex-wife. And the ex-wife had actually facilitated the notarized forgery of his signature to his son, who stole his possessions with that power of attorney. So we're looking at things like that. An elder who doesn't have any concept of what's going on because they've recently turned their finances over to someone to help them. The neighbor is helping them and not giving them any information about their finances. So they don't know what's going on with their finances. Or they give their daughter money to purchase groceries and things that they need, but that person will never give them the receipts. And so we see someone who is not providing information to the elder that they need for their own financial knowledge. So we've all heard and seen a lot of the information about current or common scams, and I want to make sure that you're aware of the scams that even if they take a downturn, many of them come back. So we see things like charity calls. There was one going around for a while where the alleged trooper association was calling and seeking funds. Want to make sure that these are legitimate charities that are calling you or that you've given to in the past. Counterfeit cashier's checks. This is when a cashier's check is sent to an individual and they are told, if you go and deposit this into your bank account and withdraw X amount, say the cashier's check is for $2,000, withdraw $1,500 and send it to us and you can keep the other $500. These checks look extremely real. And there was a law firm in the state of Alaska that was duped out of $450,000 with a counterfeit cashier's check. So you never want to you never want to deposit a cashier check like this that you didn't know was coming from a legitimate source into your bank account, your normal bank account. And it takes 7 to 10 days for a check to work its way through the clearinghouse in the United States. So if you withdraw those funds before the check has cleared, then your account is going to be overdrawn. So you want to make sure you're really careful about this. Foreign lottery scams, we get emails and texts all the time about winning foreign lotteries. If you have not entered a lottery, there is no way that you can win a lottery. And more importantly, no one should be asking you to pay for something for your winnings, no matter what it is. Even taxes, they can take the taxes out of the winning if it's legitimate. Romance scams, we see these quite a lot on Match.com, Our Time, Christian Mingle, Facebook instant messaging. Someone will look at your Facebook page, look at all the things that are public out there. They will try to gain a connection with you. Romance scams are some of the hardest scams to convince individuals are not real, that the person on the other side is not real. These folks are very good at lulling you. They're saying exactly what you want to hear, and the emotions that are being created are in the elder's brain. They're in our brains, and that's why it's very difficult to break these. And family members see this all the time. We've seen a plethora of cases, and these romance scams, they start online, then they move you to texting, then they may do calls with you, but it's not the person that you think it is. And usually within weeks, maybe at the outset of a month, they are asking you to send money for some reason. Oh, they're stuck on a boat, or oh, their credit card was cut off and they're in another country, and they're promising you this life of love and dream that you want for a relationship, and they aren't real. Publishers Clearinghouse, there are legitimate Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes, but if they are asking you to purchase something or to pay for something in order to enter or to gain your winnings, it is not legitimate. A loan, a large return for a very small investment. We had a case in Fairbanks where the woman was promised if she invested $5,000, she'd get back $20,000 in 6 months. I just need you all to remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it is always too good to be true. Credit card schemes, there have been credit card schemes run from prisons where inmates read the obituaries and they call the deceased spouse, and every credit card of a type. So for instance, your Discover card, the 4 digits, the first 4 digits of every card signifies what type of card it is. So for Discover, it's 6011. And they would call the deceased, they would call the spouse, the widow typically, and say, oh, we understand that your husband just passed away and he had a Discover card with us, and we need to verify some information for you. So we're going to give you the first 4 digits of this Discover card, and can you read the rest of it for us? And then we want to confirm, can you confirm what your address is for us? Can you confirm what the expiration date is, what the last the 3 digits on the back are? And then they were making hundreds of $1,000s of purchases with these credit cards that these individuals had. The grandchild needs bail. You get a call, it's allegedly your grandchild, or it's somebody telling you your grandchild has been arrested and needs bail. And they will always tell you, please don't call mom and dad. Well, call your grandchild, okay? Confirm first that your grandchild is where they say they are. These are 99.9% of the time a scam. There are certain red flags that we see that signify there might be financial exploitation going on. They are not 100%. Not every red flag means that there is financial exploitation, but it does mean that we would definitely look and investigate as to whether or not financial exploitation was occurring. So if you see things like mail piling up with a lot of unpaid bills, that's an indication of two things. One, that the person, the elder, one of the first things to go when we start to have memory issues and dementia is our ability to deal with numbers. So it could be that they are struggling with the financial aspect because they can't understand what the numbers are meaning as easily as they used to. It can also mean they don't have the funds to pay for these bills they used to be able to pay. So we would look into why. Excitement about winning a lottery or a prize. They're very excited about the winnings that they're coming. They're being kind of secretive. They may tell you things at first, but then the scammers tell them you can't share this with anybody. So they're very excited about something that they're going to win, that they've been told they're going to win. They may even be making preparations for winning. We've seen cases where people have sent hundreds of thousands of dollars and they've dressed up because they're told that that check is coming today, and they sit there and they wait. So we're looking at things like this. They're taking out a lot of money and they won't disclose why. One of the earliest cases we dealt with was with a woman who was told she won the Publishers Clearinghouse, and she had to go and buy these green Go cards from Walmart and send them to the lottery in order to get her winnings. And she had a very close relationship with her broker. She usually had long conversations with her broker. She would always tell her the types of trips she was taking, the things that she was doing. And what she was doing was writing checks to herself for cash out of her brokerage account. And they were large amounts of money. And whenever the broker would, try to start a conversation with her, oh, are you finally starting to, remodel that bathroom? Or are you taking a trip? She would just shut down. She would not tell her anything. So these are situations where the person is acting out of character, taking out a lot of money, and not disclosing why. They have a new companion, an advisor, or a power of attorney. And again, that they're not following their usual habits. Let's think about the individual who goes into the bank every week and takes out $50. Now that individual has a new companion, and instead of taking out $50 from the bank every week, they're taking $500 out of the bank every week. That's a red flag. The individual is fearful, they're distressed, or they're depressed, and it's probably about money, and this is very much out of character for them. Missing checks from the checking account. There's missing checks from inside the middle of the book, or there are unusual checks that are written from the checking account. This one I just talked about, there's a new individual accompanying the person into the bank. We get reports quite frequently. Not only is there a new individual accompanying the elder into the bank, but they're abusive with the elder, right? Or they're haranguing them to take money out. The elder is withdrawing substantially more than they usually do. They complain that they can't get a hold of the person who's handling their money. They've been a victim of financial exploitation in the past. There is a 75% chance that someone who has been financially exploited before will be financially exploited again. And a lot of that has to do with our brain development and the filter that is the first thing to go as we get older, which is our doubt filter. And so we tend to believe things in our 70s and 80s as true that we knew were not true when we were in our 40s. It is a filter that becomes more and more porous. Charges inconsistent with the elder's lifestyle. So you're helping mom and there is a charge for a jewelry store on her Fred Meyer's card, and you know, there's no reason that mom would buy that. There's no graduations coming up. There's not a granddaughter. She's not typically giving gifts like that, but there's a new personal care assistant in the home. So what are the things you can do to protect yourself from financial exploitation? Never, ever, ever give out your account information. If you have not initiated the call, right? So you're not calling the credit card company, you're not calling the bank, you're not calling the vendor to institute the transaction. Somebody is calling you and asking for your account information, or emailing you and asking you for your account information, or contacting you to ask you to verify your account information. You can never err on the side of caution too much. I've had calls from a credit card company claiming to be my Bank of America card. They really were my Bank of America card, but I didn't know that. It sounded very fishy. It doesn't hurt me to say, it's okay, I will call back the main number, and call back the main number to find out what it is I need to verify. Or you get an email telling you your Amazon account has been shut down and you just need to click on that link. You know what? Maybe it has, but what you need to do is exit what's been sent to you and go and log into your Amazon account like you normally would log into your Amazon account. Do not click on any links like that. Never give out your social security number when somebody asks you. If it's not for something, the hospital is fine. You've initiated the transaction, okay? If it's hard to remember, you know, what not to say, keep a script by your telephone. All it has to say is, I'm sorry, I don't give out personal information over the telephone. You can just read it. You don't have to remember what to say. Again, if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. If someone calls saying they're from Social Security or Medicare, they will never ask you for your personal information. They already have your Social Security number and your Medicare number. The IRS will never call you and ask you for payment, right? They will send you an official letter. And you know what? You can contact the IRS. You can contact the taxpayer helplines. They will absolutely never ask you to send a gift card for payment. You should never have to pay money in order to receive a prize. And that should, whether that prize is money, cash, or whether that prize is a Mercedes, or whether that prize is a new home, you shouldn't have to pay money in order to receive it. And you can't win something you didn't enter. So think about whether you actually entered the contest. Don't sign any legal documents without consulting an attorney, whether that's a will or a power of attorney or a quitclaim deed to transfer property or a business agreement or even, you know, a purchase and sale agreement, sometimes even a lease. You certainly want to have somebody take a look at those things. And don't lend money to anyone unless you don't expect to get it back. We see situations all the time where individuals lend money that they can't afford to lose, and the person's not paying them back. And they never intended to pay it back. And it's when the person never intended to pay the money back that it is financial exploitation. Don't agree to sell or rent property without a written agreement. These really need to be in writing. What people promise and what actually happens are are two very different things. Don't go into business with someone without a written agreement. We've received cases where individuals went into business, the elder was putting up all the money, and there was no written agreement about how they were supposed to, they were taking all the risk, putting all the money up, but how they were supposed to benefit from the business in any way. Were they supposed to get shares? Were they supposed to be paid part of the profit? Did they have an ownership in the business? None of that was in writing. Don't allow strangers to convince you to give them money, property, jewelry, or live in your home. We've seen many situations where an individual goes to the same church as the elder and, oh, they're down on their luck. Sure, they can come and stay with the elder. First, I want you to remember how much personal information you keep in your home. Checkbooks, wills, bank account information, retirement information, Medicare information, all kinds of personal stuff. And you're just letting somebody into your home that you really don't know. Worse, when they don't leave. They technically become a tenant, even though they're not paying you any rent. You can't get them out of your home. Be very careful. Don't send money through the mail or by wire in any way to someone or some organization you don't know. It amazes me, but I see it all the time. These scammers will ask individuals to send cash to them through the mail, which in and of itself may not seem unusual, but they're asking the individuals to put the cash in between magazine papers so it doesn't look like cash. Why? Because the authorities will stop cash if they see it in the mail for this reason, because it's likely a scam. Okay, so what can we do in an emergency situation? The Alaska legislature passed what's called the Financial Abuse Protection Order several years ago. These are like domestic violence protection orders, but very much aimed at finances. So it lets anyone, it doesn't have to be the Office of Elder Fraud, anybody has the authority to file one of these petitions. And it lets someone ask the court to keep someone from having access to an individual's finances right away. So it can freeze bank accounts, it can revoke powers of attorney, it has other methods for preventing a perpetrator from gaining access to the elder's finances. It can say a title can't be transferred. It even has a no contact order in it if, say, for instance, it's a relative who just comes over all the time and asks grandma for money. Grandma can't say no. And now, she doesn't have money for her medication. And in the end, you can certainly contact my office if you have any, if you think that there's financial exploitation happening. You can self-report, you can report for a relative, a neighbor, any individual, if you think that there is financial exploitation happening, and we are happy to investigate it and hopefully make sure that it's not happening. I wondered, Jennifer, if you guys had any specific questions. We do get a lot of questions about specific issues, and if you had any, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, we do have a question, and that's going to be from Denny.
Hi, so I have, we've had, the reason we're doing this is we've had several cases this year. And the romance is the one that keeps coming up, that we have a couple of elderly women that are on Facebook, right? And then she met somebody, and the same thing, the kids are all telling her mom this, and you can't change this woman's mind. She is convinced. And he was able to convince her to give him all of her bank account information. I mean, it was devastating. So could you talk a little bit more? You said something about the way the brain works. I'm very interested in that. And why is it that, and you said that you have an elder that's been financially exploited before, has a 75% chance of. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think I'm very interested in that, how that works.
Sure. So from a very general perspective, especially what we see with just generally all these scams, right, is the most recent brain development research shows that there is a filter in our brain. It is the last filter to mature. So it's the doubt filter, right? So when we see our teenagers and our little kid, and you know, they're so gullible, right? They fall for so much. That's because that doubt filter hasn't quite matured yet. But that doubt filter is also the first filter that starts to deteriorate in our brain as we get older. So when we look at, let's take a lottery scam first, right? There's a couple of things going on. We've got this doubt filter that's deteriorating. And so we're not catching things necessarily that sound a little fishy right off the bat like we used to. And then on top of that, right, what do the scammers do? They do a couple things. They spend time building rapport with the elder first. So let's say that they call on the cell phone, because that's usually how these start. Oh, you were in the you were a Marine. My dad was a Marine too. And so they will play on the vet status. Or we had a client who was a reverend, and he, you know, his dream is to build this beautiful church. Well, that's, you know, that's what they want to help him achieve. And they are Christians too. And he should just do the right thing. And, you know, he would think of what he could do with this money. Or the individual who had a special needs child, and we know you want to leave as much money to your special needs child as possible. So they build a rapport, and then they call constantly, 20, 30, 40 times a day, and they put pressure on the elder. You have to send it now. If you don't send it to us by the end of the day, you're not going to get your prize. So it's these combinations of factors. So that even when my investigator comes over and talks with that elder, shows him online how this is a scam, right? Exactly the people who are calling him, exactly what they're going to tell to him. He'll agree in the moment. Absolutely. He totally gets it. Then the scammer calls 10 more times, and an hour later, he's down at the MoneyGram sending $1,000. So that's what's happening between the filter in the brain that is deteriorating and the methods that the scammers use. That is why we see these scams working that we just can't believe that they work. Why would somebody believe that they have to keep sending money to get their winnings when they've not received anything at all? With romance scams, it's a little bit different. And I would say, you know, my daughter's 21, and when she was a teenager and texting, what I would tell her is texting and emailing, it creates this false sense of intimacy, because we're giving emotion in our head to the words, and we are giving the inflection that we want and the meaning that we want to our words. And so this emotion, this intimacy develops. We're developing it. And we saw a case where this started on Facebook. Again, the scammer builds a rapport. Oh, I see that you grew up in, you know, Hoboken, New Jersey. My family was from Hoboken. And what do? They go and they look on Google Maps, or they go and they look at an older map. Do you remember that theater that was on the corner? So they build a rapport. And then they need to get you off of the platform. So they start texting, or they start emailing, or they start WhatsApping. Okay. They want to get someplace where it's hard for them to be shut down. All right. And they tell you what they want to hear. They get information out of you about what your dreams and your hopes, and that you're lonely, and you know your wife of 50 years just died, or your husband of 30 years just died, right? Or even if you're surrounded by your family, you can still feel extremely lonely now that a spouse you've lived your entire life with is gone. And they are playing on that, and they are telling you what it will be like, and they want to spend the rest of their life with you, and they you know, they want to buy this beautiful house, and they're on this boat in the middle of the ocean, but as soon as they get off, they're going to come and they're going to retire to Alaska with you. And you know what? They have all this retirement money in a bank account. So why don't you go open an account so they can transfer some money to you? Okay. Oh, and in the meantime, you know, they have this grandson and he really needs an iPhone, and I'm stuck in the middle of the ocean. I can't send any money. Could you send this money to my grandson in California, who lives in California, for this iPhone? And oh, but send the money to South Carolina. And then when you do things like you question it, right? And we actually saw this. So this case started on Facebook, and then it moved to WhatsApp, and it moved to emails. And the family members were able to get actual printouts of the entire conversations. And every time this woman would question, well, it doesn't make sense, you know, if your grandson's in California, why am I sending the money to South Carolina? Oh, he's getting on a plane. And he'd get on the phone with her and he'd talk her off the ledge, because now he's on the other end of the phone, right? He's a real voice. He's a real person. And then it turned into a bank fraud scheme. Okay. So he wanted to transfer this money into their now joint account, right? Or the account she's opened to receive the money so she can start putting a down payment on a house. Well, the money got stuck in customs, and she needs to pay this $10,000 fee for the money to get out of customs. Oh, and then it's an affidavit that needs to be done, and she needs to pay the lawyer for the affidavit. And so here's an email address for the lawyer. And she would ask to talk to the lawyer, but guess what? The lawyer would only ever email her. Why would the lawyer only ever email her? Because he's the same person, right? But she could never, ever believe that this guy was not real. And it's because of the intimacy that we have created ourselves and the meaning that we've put into this relationship. And we've had elders who have sent $50, $100, $300,000 in these romance scams. And they are absolutely the hardest to break. And it's because of the emotional bond that they believe that they are feeling that has actually been created by everything that this person has said to them on paper, on text, and they have never met this person at all, even over Zoom. We will hear romance scam victims tell us, oh, no, I saw him on Zoom. And we'll say, okay, so you were speaking with him? Well, there was just a picture, you know, a static picture of him, because the country that he's in won't let him have video. They won't allow video out. So there's always a reason why you can't see him. Or they've sent money for airfare, but something has stopped the person from coming every single time, but they still have the money for all the airfare, right? So, the romance scams have less to do with the deterioration necessarily of the doubt filter, and more to do with the emotional connection that's been created that really lies with our own minds.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I actually had a
Beth,
question. Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Jennifer.
yeah, I was just wondering, what can we do legally, if anything, when this is happening and the person refuses to acknowledge it?
So we have used the financial abuse protection orders for individuals who are being scammed. So what we have done, we typically, depending on the situation, because we need to be careful. We don't want to alert the scammers that we're going to try to shut things down. So depending on the situation, we can speak with the elder, or we can gather information from the family about what's been going on, get as much specifics as we can. Many times, the family members have tried to intervene. They've even been on the phone with the scammers. We've even had situations where the police have spoken to the scammers on the phone, but nothing stops them. So we file a financial abuse protection order to freeze the elder's accounts, and simultaneously we file an emergency petition for a conservatorship. We don't want to leave somebody without the ability to get their necessities, but there's no doubt that they are unable to stop sending money from the scammers. We've had what this does is it freezes the accounts. It can prevent things like cash advances on credit cards and things like that. Get an emergency conservatorship in place. That can be a family member. Sometimes that can be a professional. And we get that person away from the scammers. It gives the conservator authority to do things like turn the cell phone off, change the number. Once the elder doesn't have access to the funds, the scammers eventually go away. And we've even had success where getting that breathing room for the elder through the FAP and the conservatorship has been enough that 6 months down the line, the person doesn't even need a conservator anymore, or the family has enough ability to sort of monitor what's going on, that they don't need a conservatorship anymore. So that's what we've been able to do. We can't get the money back from these scammers who not only are they not in Alaska, and we can go after people who are not in Alaska, but these folks aren't even in the country most of the time, and trying to find them, the federal government can't even do that most of the time. So we can stop the bleeding, but we can't necessarily get any of those funds back.
All right, good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. So your answer to that question, I have two questions now. One, to piggyback off of this topic, do you have any prevention tips for caregivers on maybe how to keep our elders from maybe looking outside of that kind of safety net? How do you keep elders from kind of falling beholden to maybe people or scammers on Facebook or anything like that?
That is a hard question, because we don't know why people are lonely, right? And a lot of it stems from, what I would say is I very rarely see elders who are taken in by these scams out of greed, right? They usually are taken in by like a romance scam out of loneliness. I think that there is a true connection between trauma, grief, and being vulnerable to a scam like this. I would say probably 85% of the romance scams I've dealt with, an elder lost their spouse sometime in the last year to 18 months, and they haven't necessarily processed that grief, and it leaves them very vulnerable. And even though they may be surrounded by family, it's not the same thing. So I think the only advice that I can really give is to keep an eye out for the red flags. And, if they need to talk to their religious leaders, if they need to talk to friends, being in groups and having connections may help. But it really is keeping an eye out for what's going on with them, because we don't know what is the lure for the particular scammer that might be targeting them. I would say from the outset, when it comes to something like Facebook, don't respond to a message from someone whom you don't know. Use your kids and your grandkids to lock your Facebook account down so that strangers can't contact you. Talk with your grandkids and your kids about how to set up the technology on your phones to make spam calls not come through to you. That's really the best that I can do.
Those are great. No, especially just knowing that people, from your experience, people who have lost a loved one between a year and 18 months, I think if family members know that maybe mom might be more susceptible within the next year, I mean, that's really valuable information. So thank you. So my second question was about, so a scam has happened, unfortunately, and the money is gone. But is there anything that an elder can do? Because I know so much about scams is the shame that a person experiences in the aftermath. But is there any path to I guess reconciliation or anything in the aftermath of a scam?
Yes, what I would say is it's really important for the family and the friends and the community to acknowledge, for especially these elders, that these scammers are very good at what they do. That anybody could easily be taken in, and that there is no shame in that at all. That they need to be grateful for the resources that have surrounded them right now, and that people are there for them, and they should not feel any shame associated with that. These folks, they are extremely good at what they do. I know that all of you you've seen the emails alone, right? I mean, they look so legitimate. How many times have you gotten a Wells Fargo email that looks so legitimate? The reason you know it's fake is you don't even have a Wells Fargo account, right? There is no shame in being taken in. By these scammers. Are incredibly good at what they do. The one piece of advice that I would really offer folks, both the elders and their family, is, I know it is difficult to talk about finances. It is taboo, very much so, in so many of our societies, but you need to talk with your family about your finances, where they are, right? What your spending habits are, especially as you get older, so that adult children can better keep an eye out and see when something is going awry, right? Too many times, because we're too afraid to ask mom and dad about their finances and about their spending and about what's going on with those, we miss so many of the signs, right? We don't know that they're caught up in things until, they've sent, a good portion of their life savings. And that is what we don't want. They've worked so hard for what they have. It is a crime for them to lose it just because we're too afraid to talk to them about their finances.
All right, beautiful. Do we have any questions in the room at all? No? Awesome. Well, everyone's saying it was very informative, and thank you. And with that, I don't think we have any other questions then.
No, it was wonderful. Thank
Thank you so much, Beth. This has been recorded. We're going to be sharing it on the Catholic Community Service YouTube page. And Denny and anyone else at Southeast Senior Services can use this now as a resource moving forward. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you ever think that there's a possible financial exploitation. If you have any concerns, we would much rather investigate something and it be nothing than not investigate and we've missed it.
I'm thinking I'm thinking of promoting this with all my caregivers is a preemptive thing.
Yeah.
So this isn't something that somebody calls you up and it's already happened that you can say, well, there's this great video for you to see. So what I want to do is email this thing to all my caregivers and everybody and say, hey, watch this now. This needs information that people need now. So
yes,
this is really important. So thank you so much.
Thank
You're
you.
so welcome. You have a nice evening.
You as
Happy
well. Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
You too.
Bye-bye.